For more debates, updates, and bonus content, sign up at thebigconversation.show. Given that you do think, Bret, there are social benefits to religion, and you're not willing to go down the Dawkins, it's just a mind virus, a mental illness or whatever. What about you personally? Have you sort of actually, do you continue in any way to sort of hold on to any religion, tradition, ritual that perhaps your forebears, would have treated obviously with a spiritual dimension, but you see still as having some kind of social benefit?
Yeah, let me answer that as a father. I have two boys, 15 and 13, and we have been experimenting with new traditions, taking traditions that matter and trying to update them. And we recognize that this is a kind of heresy that we are engaged in consciously, but the idea is that there are things we can say now that we know aren't in the traditions that we came from. And I should say my wife is not Jewish. Her dad was a Catholic. But we have, for example, for Hanukkah, we have 8 principles, and we go through one principle per night, and we talk about them with the kids. We talk about why the principle is arguably in the top 8. We talk about what the hazards that come along with the principle might be, how you can take a principle and you can instantiate it too narrowly to be useful, or in some way that it becomes dangerous. And our hope is that as the boys grow up, that revisiting these things yearly will create models in their minds that will allow them to actually bring things to the table that we can't provide them. So, in a sense, arming them to have discussions about the central questions of how to be human and how civilization should function, so that maybe when a conversation happens 20 years from now, it has elements that this one can't.
Mm. And Alister, as we draw to a close, do you think that even non-religious people can, in that sense, benefit from the meaning and ritual that religion does offer, and Christianity specifically, I suppose?
I suppose one thing that Christianity offers, which is relevant here, this is the thing that focus on, there are many others, but is this long tradition of wrestling with questions from within a tradition and realizing how, in effect, the base of this tradition is very, very rich, and sometimes it only finds limited application here, limited application there, and the resources left over to look at other things. And that's why I hear Bret very rightly saying, look, we've got a lot of rethinking to do. And therefore, I mean, for a Christian theologian, the classic thing to do is to reinvestigate the tradition, to say, is there something in there that we've been overlooking or suppressing, and is this the time to reach into the treasure chest and bring out something that is perhaps neglected, but actually might be something that could inspire us to do this. Because I think Bret is right. I think that there's a real problem here, and the thing I find difficult, which may be a reflection on me, is this. I recognize the challenge, I know many will. It's how on earth we motivate people to do something about it. And in other words, do we have to change ourselves so we can respond to this? And that for me is an open question. I mean, Richard Dawkins, I know you made some very good criticism of him, but at the end of The Selfish Gene, he in fact says, look, we alone can rise above our genetic terms, so to speak, and do something. And yeah, I always got the impression that what he said before that actually made that rather difficult. And that my concern is that maybe there is something flawed about us, which means that even when we see a real challenge, that somehow we're drawn down by tribalism or by self-interest, and in effect don't rise to what the challenges are.
And if I may, presumably that's where you believe there is an ultimate truth available that actually allows people to live beyond their DNA in that sense. In some kind
I think we have to transcend the limits of our DNA. I think that's what Bret's saying as well. But I think I'm also saying that the dreaded word sin might come into this, because there is something about us which means we're very good at making problems and then not being able to clear up the mess afterwards. And I think that's where we are at the moment.